Are we looking at a man who might die behind bars?
No, I don't think so. And don't forget that this is the only one that was going to take place before November 5th. The other ones, and you mentioned the documents case in Miami, that was postponed indefinitely because of some of the evidence. So that we don't even have a date for that one. And that's what a lot of people thought was the strongest one. But going back to this one, will it change voters' mind? Actually, PBS, I believe it was PBS and NPR, so both very left-leaning organizations, we would say, did a poll in the last couple of days and asked people, would a conviction in the New York trial change the way you voted? And 67% of the people said no.
Look, I'm just going to ask you. I'm just going to ask you to just pause for a second, please, Jennifer,
Sure.
if that's okay. But please do stay where you are, Jennifer. You and the Republicans overseas. I am now joined by Donald Trump's former advisor, Seb Gorka. Seb, thank you very much for coming on to GB News here. All right, look, you were in the White House with Trump. You know this guy. What's going to be happening now? What's going to be going through his mind?
Well, everything he's said for the last 5 months during this kangaroo court of a show trial. As he said, this isn't about him. This is about everybody who wants America back, from the left-wing crazies who've opened our borders, have their kids chanting from the river to the sea in pro-Hamas demonstrations, who've let 8 million illegals into the country, seen record inflation, record increases in the price of energy and petrol. So look, this man is undaunted. His challenger for the presidency, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I think will be in his next cabinet, God willing, said it correctly 48 hours ago. Whether he's found guilty or innocent will redound to his chances. He's already defeating the incumbent Joe Biden in all the battleground states. If he were found innocent, then he would have been vindicated. If he's found guilty, as he were today by this travesty of a decision, the people who say, you know what, that's rigged, are going to support him even more. He now has the majority of the Hispanic vote in America. He now has upwards of 28% of the black vote. If those turn into actual propensities on election day, the Democrats are stuffed. They're dead.
Okay, Seb, now just enlighten us over here on this side of the pond as to exactly why you say this is a kangaroo court. Why?
Where to begin? How many hours do you have? So let's start with the fact that the judge, Juan Merchan, illegally, according to the state regulations of New York, donated to the Joe Biden campaign. Judges aren't allowed to donate to campaigns. Not only that, he donated to an anti-Trump super PAC as well. His daughter, Lara Merchan, has made $93 million off the Democrats since the trial began and off her daddy's case. Number one. Number two, we had this outre, bizarre, perverse jury instructions from the judge 2 days ago where he said, you know that thing about 12 of you have to agree on the guilty thing? Don't worry about that. For the first time in history for a felony trial, if 4 of you agree on one of them and not the rest, and then another 4 of you agree on another of the charges, that's good for me. I'll take that as a unanimous verdict. It is Stalin-esque, it's Kafka, it's out of control. You don't have that option to say, you can pick and choose like you're on the buffet line at a smorgasbord. No, 12 have to say he's guilty or he's innocent.
Do you think they'll see the inside of a prison cell?
If he does, the Democrats are more stupid than I ever thought. Look, he's a free man today. He just about 10 minutes ago left the court in his Secret Service motorcade back to his home. They've said the sentencing will be in July, of course, right before the Republican convention, because none of this is political at all. Look, if they put him in prison, he's just going to stroll into the White House a few months later, because the Democrats are cretins. They're evil sons of bitches, but they're also cretins because they haven't read the Constitution. The Constitution is very explicit. There's only 3 requirements to be president. You have to be over 35, you have to be a natural-born citizen, and you have to be resident in the United States for the 14 years prior to the election. Doesn't say anything about being a convicted criminal. That's how dumb the Democrats are.
OK, all right. Now, just purely because this show gets replayed, possibly anyway, in the early hours of the morning, I want to apologise for some minor bad language there, but I think that emphasises the strength of feeling. Seb, while I've got you, and thank you for your time. I know you've not got too long here, but what's the reaction to this going to be like? I mean, there was the January 6th stuff. I know that a lot of that was massively overplayed, you know, but there were serious aspects to it. Are we going to see things like that again here, do you think?
Well, we still don't know who the provocateurs were in January 6th, so that's a very good question. I think one of my callers said it on my national radio show about 30 minutes ago. What we need to do right now, you don't even have to buy anything. Get a piece of paper, write in big felt tip, Trump, and stick that on the window of your car, because we are in solidarity with the 45th, and God willing, if we do our part, the 47th President of the United States.
Seb, thank you very, very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it, and no doubt we'll be hearing a little bit more from you over the course of what is going to be a bumper news day. That's Sebastian Gorka there, who's a former advisor to Donald Trump in the White House. What I'm going to do, so what we're witnessing here, by the way, if you are watching us on television, again, I would also just say if you're listening to us on radio, then do try to get near a television or a laptop and watch this. Is Trump's motorcade is driving through New York. This has been going on for quite a while now. As he leaves that courtroom, he has been found guilty of all 34 charges. What I would like to do is to just read out to you what's on the front of some of our newspaper front pages right here in this country. I'm going to start with the Daily Telegraph. Trump guilty, and the picture of Trump not really looking downcast, just looking down, really. Former president is the first to become convicted of a crime after hush money verdict. So that's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. We've got the front of the Daily Times as well, and these pictures, you know, sometimes you just see, oh don't worry, when Trump gets to his destination, I'll show all of these to you, but some absolutely iconic images that you just know. These pictures, yeah, there it is, look at that. Now, that might seem a bit innocuous now, but mark my words, that is a shot that will live forever. Trump found guilty in hush money trial. He's in the courtroom there. He's looking defiantly down the lens like it's a barrel of a gun. Donald Trump has been convicted of fraud by a New York jury in relation to falsifying business records to conceal a payment made to a porn star during the 2016 campaign for the White House. Let's see, shall we, how the Daily Mirror have reacted to this historic trial verdict. Ex-president faces trial after jury convicts him on all 34 counts over hush money trial. There is that picture of him there for added emphasis of him with Stormy Daniels. The Daily Star, why not? We've come this far. Orange man baby is guilty on all counts. You've been tangoed. So a variety of different ways in which President Trump, former President Trump, has been treated there. And they've done tangoed in orange writing. I will just say to you, we're going to hear from Nigel Farage very shortly, so stay tuned for that. This is the man, let me remind you, that is going to be heading off to campaign with President Trump as well. So there is that. Suzanne Evans still joins me in the studio, political commentator, alongside former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Suzanne, I'll start with you. What do you make of that overview of the front pages there?
It's such a dramatic front page, isn't it? I mean, I just can't get my head around the fact that this is a former president, the leader of the free world, who's basically been brought down by a stripper.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what has happened here. And that is, I think, absolutely historic.
It shows you the power of the stripper, doesn't it?
Quite incredible. Very interesting, actually. The Times, their take on it is that, yes, he's got a possible penalty of up to 4 years in prison, but given his age, let's not forget, this is a man who's 77, and lack of previous convictions, and that he's non-violent, he's likely to be spared incarceration by the judge. But remember what he said when he came out of that courtroom. He had a right pop at the judge.
Yeah, he said it's rigged.
You know, I've often thought that Trump is his own...
How to win friends and influence people.
Yeah, he's the exact opposite of that, isn't he? He is so often his own worst enemy. And there he does. He comes out... This man's... He's got his life in his hands, basically, and he decides to have a pop at him. It's quite extraordinary.
I thought there'd be more reaction to this, you know. So we are witnessing now live shots from downtown New York, all right? So everyone in New York is aware of the news that their former president has been found guilty of, you know, relatively serious offences, quite serious offences, I thought the streets would be packed full of people, but no, and it wasn't that busy outside the courtroom. Matthew, what's your take? The front page is here, Trump guilty.
I mean, the Daily Star, has got it for me with the orange man baby is guilty on all counts. You've been tangoed. It's become the sort of political paper of record after the Liz Truss lettuce. But I think this is one of those days where people are going to remember where they were when the verdict came through, isn't it? And these front pages are going to be framed on a lot of walls because this is absolutely an incredible moment, not just for the United States, but for the world. This is the man who was the leader of the free world and who may well be the leader of the free world again. And he's just been convicted on 34 counts. What a difference to us. And the slice of cake. He's been brought down by a stripper. Our Prime Minister was brought down by a slice of cake.
All right, so look, what we're looking at now is that the Trump motorcade has just stopped. I believe that he will be getting out of that car, so we'll be getting another look at former President Donald Trump any moment now as the doors to his vehicle are opened by the Secret Service agents who have been flanking him throughout this journey from that courtroom to his property there in New York. Just to emphasise, if you're just joining us, yes, Donald Trump has been found guilty of all 34 charges. Any second now he will come out of that vehicle. I wonder what he's going to do. I mean, he's obviously going to come out swinging. He has already come out swinging. The door has just opened then. That is Trump walking quite casually, quite slowly into his property there, or down the road, actually. At least it seems like a slightly odd thing to do, to have him walk for that length of time in the open there after this verdict. I must say, this is quite bizarre what we're looking at here, I think. Former President Trump, I wonder if he's going
to deliver another media statement.
I think he's going to deliver another media statement here. He's waving to crowds. I just wonder if we might be able to see if there is another camera shot a bit closer down. I know my team will be working on that, but it appears there he is. There we go. Can we take some audio on this, please, to see what the situation feels like on the ground, if we can, possibly? It's Trump there outside Trump Tower, stopping and waving to the crowd. So that was OK. No statement. He's decided that he was just going to go and wave around. I will say that there weren't that many people there, actually. So, you know, he was doing a little bit of a wave, but there weren't that many people there. He has headed up now and will go back into Trump Tower. So Trump has left that courtroom after saying it was a rigged trial. The judge was bent, and he is just going to continue to fight. I believe. I'm just trying to figure out if he's actually gone inside now. I think he must have done, but yeah. In fact, there he is, just walking into Trump Tower. So, Suzanne, do you think that Nigel Farage would be wise to still go and campaign for President Trump?
I think he almost certainly will. I mean, he's made it quite clear. He's put out on Twitter he thinks that the trial was rigged. You're going to be talking to him very soon. I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say. But yeah, this isn't going to put up Nigel. Nigel loves the cut and thrust of politics. He doesn't shy away from controversy. Absolutely not. He clearly thinks Trump is innocent. So of course he's going to support him. Yeah. Absolutely.
What do you reckon, Matthew? Do you think it's a good look for Nigel, who we are going to be hearing from shortly, to go and campaign for?
I mean, I think Nigel has to be careful in how much he condemns the court process, because Americans may feel that it's rigged, but to British eyes, it looks, it looks like justice has been done.
I'm joined now by journalist Spencer Critchley. Spencer, thank you very much. It's a fast-moving picture here. So the news broke about, an hour ago now exactly. Former President Trump guilty of all 34 counts, OK? This includes hush money payments, fraud, etc., in relation to Stormy Daniels. He has come out straight away, said this is rigged, it's not real, don't believe it, and I'll be fighting this election on November the 5th, and you better vote for me. What's going on?
Well, one way to look at this, despite what former President Trump all too predictably claims, is as a triumph of what's best about American democracy and about liberal democracy generally, as shared with Britain and much of the modern world. Much as Trump wants his followers to disbelieve it, the fact is that we have a separation of powers for very good reasons. The judicial branch is separate from the executive branch and the legislative branch for very good reasons. And those reasons protect all of us, protect the rights of all of us. And by trying to train people to believe that everything is rigged, and he, for some mysterious reason, this person with a well-established reputation over a lifetime as a con man, is the only person in the world we can trust. that itself is a direct assault on democracy. So whatever he claims and whatever his most devoted followers desperately want to believe, this is actually a triumph
if you don't mind me interrupting
democracy.
here, because it's a relevant point. You've mentioned his devoted followers, OK? And they are absolutely, completely and utterly devoted. Some people have been camping outside that courtroom since day dot. And what we are seeing now is, I think, some of those followers outside his residence. Do you predict that there might be some trouble afoot here?
I certainly hope not. We have to assume that there's a fair likelihood of that anytime something happens to Trump or anytime he stirs people up. We've already seen terrible violence in this country, including murders, which seems all too clearly to have been inspired by Trump, if not directly organized by him, as in the January 6th insurrection at our Capitol building. So I know it's something that the FBI and other federal authorities and state and local authorities take very seriously. And I hope and expect that they're prepared for it.
Right. And what do you make of his chances at this election? People are saying that this is the best thing that could have happened to him. I mean, Tucker Carlson says that if he isn't killed before November the 5th, then he actually will walk it.
Yes, and Tucker Carlson's remarks are another example of this kind of all-out verbal assault on democracy, trying to tear it down by tearing down people's confidence in it. This utterly irresponsible and truly life-threatening lie about the supposed plot against former President Trump's life by the FBI puts the lives of FBI and other law enforcement officials in grave danger. And it's frankly disgusting.
Can I just say one thing, Spencer? I am just getting news through to me. This is interesting. Donald Trump's donation websites are crashing with the volume. They cannot handle. This is what I'm getting from several different media reports. I'm talking to you, and I am in a studio here right now, so I will caveat this by saying I have not myself tried to access a Donald Trump donation website. However, I have no reason to disbelieve it. They are saying that they are crashing. So in terms of actual public support and money, it looks as though this already has been quite a good thing for the former president.
Yes, certainly among his most devoted people. That's what I would expect. Now, of course, this news is coming from Trump world, so it's safe to assume it's at least misleading, if not outright dishonest. And it's also safe to assume that if a Trump-affiliated website crashes, it could simply be technical incompetence. But I think I'm quite willing to believe that it's true in this case, because we've seen before that any perceived attack on Donald Trump is seen as an attack on his devoted followers, as I see. And I think really, if people are trying to understand what can look like madness to rational people, whether they're on the right or the left, it helps to think of Trump as a pre-modern figure from feudal times, before the world was transformed by Enlightenment reason and political liberalism.
Okay.
He's more like a feudal king, and once you've sworn loyalty, there's no going back.
Look, I'm just going to emphasise I have received a message from Nigel Farage, and we will be bringing him up on your screens, hopefully, in a matter of moments. So stay tuned, everybody, for that. Spencer, I have just logged on to Donald Trump's, Donald Trump's websites, OK? So this is donaldjtrump.com. On that website, it says this: breaking news, political prisoner. I am a political prisoner. I was just convicted in a rigged political witch hunt trial. I did nothing wrong. They've raided my home, arrested me, took my mugshot, and now they've just convicted me. Crooked Joe Biden needs to get the message right here, right now, that his chances of a second term end today. But for that to happen, our immediate pushback must be so massive it will go down in history. We must make Joe Biden regret this forever happening. Spencer, look, thank you very much. I'm sorry, we don't have the opportunity to go back to you right now, but can I just say thank you very much for coming on and at such short notice. That's Spencer Critchley there, who's a journalist. This Donald Trump website now has options to donate. It says never surrender and a picture of his mugshot. You can donate anything from $3,500 to $250, by the way. This is not a plug, but for just before someone decides to investigate me, I am simply reporting something that I think is quite interesting that you can do now on the Donald Trump website. So Donald Trump's team, Matthew, have already come out. He's a political prisoner. That's the line.
They will absolutely try and weaponise the conviction. They obviously need to try and get the momentum back, because the absolute bald facts of 34 convictions, 34 charges being convicted on are out there. So they'll just be trying to get back the momentum. They'll manage to do that with their own supporters. The keys are those independents and those swing voters. How will this play? And that's what we'll be looking for over the next 24 hours.
Sorry, Suzanne, just before I go to you on this, Nigel Farage is ready and he's joining us now. So this is Nigel Farage. Nigel, look, thank you very much. I was not expecting to talk to you about this tonight. Maybe we could have dissected question time, but here we are. What do you make of this? I mean, this is landmark, it's groundbreaking, it's Trump, it's guilty, and it's all 34 counts.
Yes, it's enormous. But, you know, when you look at the fact that the jury was chosen from a district that only had 10% Republican support, you begin to understand the sheer politicization of the American judicial system. This is something I've railed against, actually, for many, many years, and said to friends, you know, it isn't working anymore. Do you know, 98% of cases in America that go to court result, before they go to court, in guilty verdicts. Everything is wrong about American justice. I can give you some breaking news from Team Trump, which is that the Trump donation website has crashed in the last half an hour. That tells you one awful lot about what this means. Because, okay, you were just having that conversation about, you know, the middle swing voters. Any fair American can see that this whole case was concocted from day one. They knew exactly what they were doing. They've got this judgment. And I have to say that I now think, I really do genuinely think, that Trump is now going to win the presidency by a very big margin, because people realize things are rotten in America.
Could you just explain to us, I mean, look, you know American politics inside out, really. Could you just explain to us exactly why you think this is so rotten? Because they have a very different way of doing things over there, don't they, when it comes to their judicial system?
Well, they do, and they talk about Magna Carta all the time, but actually they've got it wrong. Elected judges elected on manifestos. Get Trump, and they're elected. Juries who are, well, they were certainly, I mean, this judge told them exactly what they had to do, and they jolly well did it. The absolute politicization of judiciary from top to bottom in America. It's not working anymore. It needs a really radical president to look at this system and to change it. And, you know, how on earth can anybody have a judge presiding over their case who openly, publicly says he hates Trump and wants to get him? The whole thing, Patrick, you can't believe how rotten this has become. And the left, the modern left in America and parts of it in the UK, and we see it through cancel culture and much else, they are so obsessed with beating their opponents, they will sink to any levels to do it. I repeat the point. Fair-minded Americans will look at this and say it's simply wrong.
Do you think you will see the inside of a prison cell?
I think that's unlikely, because there is an appeals process. He will obviously use that. And you would have thought that any judge that wanted to maintain peace and order in America daren't do it. But I'll be honest with you, I never thought, on the very odd case, that because this had happened, it might have affected the election. I never thought a jury would unanimously find him guilty on all 34 counts. So I could be wrong. Maybe he will go to prison. Maybe he'll be a modern-day martyr, for all I know.
Are you still going to be going out and helping him out in his campaign then, despite this?
Oh, good Lord, yes. In fact, Patrick, I'd planned to be there today, but because of the UK general election, just too much else going on. But I will definitely be there on the 11th of July when this sentencing takes place. And I'll be there with the GB News film crew, and we'll capture every moment of something. I mean, this is one of the biggest stories in history.
Yeah, it is. What's your message to Donald Trump? You know, I'm not going to go as far as to say you've got him on speed dial, but you have got a very good relationship with him. I've seen that firsthand myself. What are you going to say to him?
Stay strong, and he will. He will. He is the most remarkable human being. Whatever they throw at this bloke, he is tough, he is resilient. In fact, the worse they behave, and we've been through it all before, haven't we? The Russia hoax, the Ukraine impeachments, and now this. Whatever they throw at him, in some ways makes him more determined and makes him feel that he's even more of a figure that has to get America back on track to being a decent, sensible country.
You mentioned in the statement that you put out the day after the general election was called that it's vital for the world that America gets its next choice right. OK. Who are the big winners from Trump's guilty verdict here now, do you think?
The warmongers. The warmongers. Those that want America, to go to war. Trump has been a peacemaker. This is what everyone forgets. You know, the Abraham Accords, crossing the line into North Korea. This is not really what they wanted. This sort of neocon attitude that took root 20 years ago is as deeply embedded in the Democrats, actually, as it is within the Republicans. And they can't bear the thought of Trump going around the world negotiating peace deals. They all seem to want the Ukraine war to go on for as long as it possibly can, whereas he wants to try and find some, if it's possible, negotiated settlement. So they are big winners. And the Democrats think they're big winners, but you know something? They're going to come out of this as very big losers, in my opinion.
I really appreciate your time this evening. I know that you've raced home and you come on for us, and I hope that you don't mind. I would just like a couple more points with you, if that's okay, because I want to know what you think this means for Britain. OK, because, you know, we're looking at live shots here from New York. We've been camped outside that New York courthouse for however long. We've just spoken about, you know, a very internationalist look there about what this might mean on the geopolitical stage. But what does this mean for Britain? How does our government now have to respond to the fact that President Trump has just been found guilty of all 34 counts?
They're going to find it very awkward. Very awkward. But then, to be honest, this government's been pretty arm's length with Trump all the way through. Interesting that David Lammy has been out to meet Trump's team. Maybe Labour will take a different view. I don't know. Look, you know, the most important thing to remember is this. America are our key ally. They are our biggest trading partner in the world as a country, as opposed to a trading bloc. And I've just always had this view that we're living now in a more dangerous world than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I put it to everyone, whether you like this man's style or you don't, whether you like his outlandishness or you don't, the world will be a safer place if he's back as the 47th president and not Joe Biden and the Democrats, who frankly have been disastrous. And ever since the fall of Kabul, the world's bullies have seen this as an opportunity to advance. So it is in Britain's interest that we have a president who is pro-Britain. Biden's not, by the way, as you know, very much on the side of Irish nationalism. A president that can bully the other NATO members into actually upping their defense spending, and a president as the leader of the free world who people like Putin actually fear.
Yeah, no, indeed. I also know that you're very close with the wider Trump family. This is such BS, tweeted Donald Trump Jr. Piers Morgan says this is a sad, shameful, ridiculous day for America to drag a former president who is running for president again through criminal courts over something so trivial. Feels a massive overreach and incredibly divisive and obviously politically partisan action. Well, it's interesting. I'm not going to ask you to recreate your ding-dong that you had earlier tonight with Piers Morgan, by the way. But it is interesting because Piers Morgan fell out with Trump, didn't he, really? And for him to say this is an incredibly divisive and obviously politically partisan action really does lend a lot of weight to what a huge amount of people are saying over there who are in that middle ground, who are maybe predisposed to dislike Trump, actually. They can say, well, hang on, look, we can see straight through with this. I'm just not really sure how this ends, Nigel, because, you know, we saw what we saw on January the 6th. Are we going to potentially get repeats of that?
On Piers Morgan, by the way, Morgan now thinks Trump will win, so he's being nice to Trump. When he thought Trump was going to lose, he was beastly to him in newspaper articles. Morgan believes in nothing, absolutely nothing, other than the self-promotion of Morgan, who is now, of course, a YouTuber. And I had a very interesting exchange with him this evening when I did point out. He said, well, you should be ready for the election, Nigel. I said, well, unlike you, Piers, I have an evening TV show. Yours got cancelled. Anyway, that's by the by. I just couldn't resist saying it.
You've been sitting on that line for a while, have you?
Well, I was waiting for the moment, Patrick, you know, and it, of course, presented itself. Look, I do think there is a genuine worry about the political divide in America. The sheer hatred that the left have for the conservative movement can provoke an equal and sometimes more than equal opposite reaction. It is very, very, very worrying indeed. I just hope that Trump says to his supporters, you know, for goodness sake, stay within reasonable bounds, whatever happens to me. The worse they do to me, the greater our chance of winning. And the polls to date have showed that. As I said to you, the donation site has crashed tonight as people are dying to give this man money.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and he's got to say that, especially in light of the fact that some of the other charges that he's facing, you know, in relation to that, quotes unquote, insurrection, election interference, as well. You know, he's got to play this one very, very carefully, hasn't he? You know, he could get up to 55 years for that. He could get up to 76.5 years for this Georgia racketeering case, which, as far as I understand, is one of the more bizarre ones in all of this. As well. Look, Nigel, can I just say a massive thank you to you for coming on and for giving us so much of your time on what has been an incredibly busy day for you. So you take care, Nigel. We'll chat to you very soon. Thank you very much. That's Nigel Farage there. Let's just remind ourselves, shall we, of what former President Trump said in the immediate aftermath of that unanimous, or I should say, sorry, being guilty on all counts of those 34 charges. Let's go.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration.
Well, I welcome into the fray now the spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, Errol Moorcock. Errol, thank you very much. Your initial reaction to this absolutely bombshell verdict, former President Trump guilty on 34 counts.
Well, thank you for having me in this most historical moment. I guess the takeaway I have is initially not partisan or political, but as an American. And it just tells me how much hate one half of this country has for the other half. Because regardless of who Donald Trump is and what Donald Trump has done as president or as a private citizen, everybody with any sort of rationality would realize that these charges are a complete overreach of justice. This is a weaponized trial. They're launching it specifically right before an election. They somehow believe that turning our candidate into a martyr is an ideal strategy, which is, I believe, going to backfire. Personally, I'm baffled. I thought there was going to be at least one decent man, woman, or other who was going to be on that jury, who was going to stand up for the values in the country that I grew
Errol,
up in.
can I just look? Thank you for this. Can I just interject, because I am getting some breaking news in my ear, as you would imagine, on an event like this. I'm going to ask you to preempt something for me, if that's all right. Look in your crystal ball, Errol. We're going to be hearing from the district attorney, supposedly in the next few minutes. There's a podium at the ready here. What is he going to say, Errol?
He's going to say, I got him. He's going to say that I ran on targeted persecution of a citizen, and I got him. And I got him for you, my voters, the people here who did this. And he's going to be right. He did achieve what he promised he would do. And you know, history's never going to forgive him for that. There's ramifications to all behavior, and this one is going to cross a line. But this is a moment of jubilance and celebration for the corrupt cabal of Biden actors who have essentially tried to play the final card before the election. This stops the president from campaigning. You'll expect to hear the DA revel in that ability. If imagine Donald Trump is put into prison, which, by the way, I dare them to do it. I dare them to do that. Prove themselves right and see how much of an overreach that is, because the American people aren't as foolish as the people of New York City obviously are.
If you're just joining us now, again, I'm going to tell you what you're looking at here. So this is New York City, and we are about to hear from the district attorney, who has now made history, be the first district attorney that has got a conviction from a former or serving US president. Trump has been found guilty on all 34 counts. There's a bank of media in front of that podium. The second that district attorney comes out there, we will take that for you. But what is interesting, Errol, as well, is that there appears to be a little bit of drama here going on, all right? So I can see two, I don't think they are whiteboards. I suspect there's something behind those things there. This has been prepared, hasn't it? Quite significantly. You can tell we appear to be looking at a lectern here that is about to be used for a solidly pre-prepared and pre-planned interview and statement in anticipation of having found this guy guilty in front of the gawping media, Errol.
Not only that, which is absolutely correct on all counts, but they knew this and they flaunted it the other day by sending Robert De Niro down as an official Biden-Harris campaign apparatchik who went and made these ridiculous announcements. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't already know the verdict. This verdict came out immediately. It was a cooked and booked thing. It's basically like betting on Turkish third division soccer. It's not legitimate. This election and this thing is being influenced by outside actors in a way that has never crossed a line. It's a proverbial Rubicon. Yes, there's political gamesmanship. Yes, there's been legal attacks, but never have they crossed the line into criminal persecution of a citizen. And this is going to reverberate in ways I can't imagine. I'm getting texts from people on the left, people on the right, people out of the country. It's a human instinct. This is obviously corruption, and it's obviously going to corrupt our electoral process.
Let me just emphasize what's happening. I mean, we were right. They've turned those whiteboards around. I can't make out exactly what's on them now, but we're going to be told soon. There's a gentleman there who's at that microphone, testing the microphone. The press, they're all ready. They're all waiting. There's a bank of photographers and a bank of journalists. They are getting a little bit of a snapshot, so hopefully we'll see this on social media and we can bring that to you if there is a delay here of what is on those boards. What do we know about Alvin Bragg? This is the man that any moment now is going to take to that microphone and say, Trump, we got him. What do we know about Alvin Bragg, the district attorney?
Well, we know that President Trump refers to him as Fat Alvin, so we can start with that. But going from there, he's a vindictive, petty individual who has brought a case that nobody else would take. The state of New York wouldn't take it. The federal government wouldn't take it. But Alvin Bragg, this individual here, believes that he's above all forms of the process, and he's going to be the one who takes it. So he's a megalomaniac. He's a narcissist. This is his 15 minutes of fame that he's stretched out into a year. And now, against my biggest wishes, this man has had a substantive and real impact on the way this election is going to go. And that's terrible for the country because he does not represent anybody, let alone the good people of New York, who I thought one of them at least would be on this jury. So Alvin Bragg cooked and booked it, and now he's going to have his moment of I guess, glory over all of the people in this country, the 80 million Trump supporters who are watching their political candidate for president be put into prison potentially for truncated charges based on nothing.
The sentencing date is going to be the 11th of July 2024. So we have that to look forward to, I suppose, if that's one way of putting it anyway. You are adamant that this is going to work in Trump's favour. The breaking news that Nigel Farage brought to us not so long ago was that apparently the donation site on Donald Trump's websites has crashed, which implies that so many people are now desperately trying to get the information, get some donations there to him. Yeah, and what you're looking at now, again, I'll just emphasise, the district attorney is expected to give a statement any moment now. When you say, though, that he brought a case against Trump that nobody else would, I mean, look, is that strictly true? Because there are actually already quite a lot of other cases against Trump. So clearly people were happy to bring them against him in Georgia. They were happy to bring it against him elsewhere as well.
Those cases were related directly to at least something that you could tie to reality, I would say. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the records cases, the classified documents, there were physically documents in Mar-a-Lago. Like we just dispute who can declassify and this and that, just as Joe Biden had documents in his garage. But this case was so far beyond the realm of reality. We're saying that by paying Stormy Daniels this hush money and technicality of calling a legal payment, this impacted the entire 2016 election.
I've got to ask. Do you just not believe that Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels and then paid her off?
Well, I believe that he has a sworn affidavit from her saying that they didn't have an affair. And he denies it, and she had to deny it, and she has to pay him over $500,000 in legal fees based on him winning the lawsuit against her. So based on that, yes, I don't think that it happened. I have no reason to disbelieve the president.
Okay, because I mean, if it did happen, the other aspect of this, which we've not actually discussed yet, is, you know, as a conservative, as a Republican, the idea of an affair with a porn star, no less, and then lying about it whilst, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, Errol, but whilst married, I believe. You know, that wouldn't play well with the base, would it?
It wouldn't play well with the base if the base was stereotyped as a very, you know, puritanical evangelical base. But we have a big tent, and America has a 50% divorce rate, and majority of divorces based on infidelity. So if anything, Americans, at least statistically, understand a flawed candidate. If that is how they see him, I don't think that Donald Trump is alone in having erred. And even the Christian voters often point to the fact that God chooses interesting people, this and that. So...
Errol, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you very much. Please stay where you are. We're going to go now to Alvin Bragg, the District Attorney. Let's take it, if we can, live from New York City. This is Alvin Bragg, the District Attorney, who has just secured guilty verdicts on all counts against former President Donald Trump. He's about to take to the stand there in front of the waiting media. Let's just see if we can drop in now, hopefully, and get a little bit of the action there. I wonder what he's going to say. He must be a happy man. He has, rightly or wrongly, made history. So hopefully we can hear him. Let's just try to take that now. I think there might be a couple of issues with the connection that we've got there, so we will just keep endeavouring to take Alvin Bragg there, who is the New York District Attorney. Just to emphasise why he's such a controversial figure, the Trump campaigner are saying that he's politically motivated. He is a Democrat. People are saying that, you know, he's run on campaigns like Get Trump and all of this stuff, and that posed a problem, and that was, by definition, a political interference. Donald Trump is staying in New York City tonight. He arrived back at Trump Tower. We showed that to you live here. So Alvin Bragg is speaking after this guilty verdict. He was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Bragg is a former New York State and federal prosecutor. Drew national attention when he made history. We canto to Alvin Bragg, who is now talking.
Bank statements and calendar appointments. This type of white-collar prosecution is core to what we do at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. In the 1930s, District Attorney Thomas Dewey ushered in the era of the modern, independent professional prosecutor. For now nearly 90 years, dedicated professionals in this office have built upon that fine tradition. A major part of our practice during that nearly 90 years has been public integrity work, including cases involving jurists, local and state electeds, public servants, and others. I want to thank this phenomenal prosecution team, embodying the finest traditions of this office: professionalism, integrity, dedication, and service. They are model public servants, and I am proud and humbled to serve side by side with them. The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law, and doing so without fear or favor. I want to conclude by expressing deep gratitude to the NYPD and the officers of the Office of Court Administration for securing the courthouse, all of our safety, making sure the courthouse and all of the other matters that are important in their own right continued seamlessly. They will continue to be and have always been incredible partners. Thank you.
And do you plan to request a prison sentence for this conviction? And do you think that Donald Trump's multiple violations of the gag order that was in place should factor into that request at all?
The judge scheduled a sentencing for July 11th. We will speak in court in that time. He also set a motion schedule. We will speak in our court filings as we've done throughout this proceeding.
Donald Trump has repeatedly targeted you personally and members of your prosecution team. Do you have a response to the former president after this trial is concluded?
I do not.
In February, you decided not to bring a case against Donald Trump. You criticized that. You criticized when you vetted him in March 2023. You criticized when people really started to understand that case. How do you think of all that now, seeing the results of that? Can you kind of put that in context with your personal history?
I did my job. Our job is to follow the facts and the law without fear or favor. And that's exactly what we did here. And what I feel is just gratitude to work alongside phenomenal public servants who do that each and every day in matters that you all write about and make the press, and in lots of matters that you don't. I did my job. We did our job. Many voices out there. The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
Last, Mr. Steinglass, many people said the prosecution was masterful and flawless. Just want to know how you feel at this moment. Sorry.
I'll let you go ahead.
How do you feel?
Mr. Steinglass, I think some of you probably saw him speak for a little bit the other day. So he's done his job, as has this team. And he just told me, tell him how I feel. I think you said that. I will just say just enormous gratitude. You know, our system, I talked about the jurors at the beginning of my remarks. We have a phenomenal system. 12 everyday New Yorkers. They listen to the judge's directions. They follow the evidence. You saw them in court every day. They were careful and attentive. And so I feel deep gratitude to work alongside them, to be a part of this system. And I just want to echo that this is what we're doing every single day. I mean, during this trial, just this week, right, ghost gun indictment, Grimaldi's wage theft plea resolution, sex crimes, convictions, all sorts of work that's being done by phenomenal public servants. So we're before you today on this obviously consequential matter, but this is what we do every day. We follow the facts and the law without fear or favor.
If a jail sentence is in the cards, it is likely that Trump and his attorneys would seek a stay on enforcement of that sentence pending appeal. If that were the scenario, would your office object to staying the sentence?
I'm going to let our words in court speak for themselves when we get to the sentencing matter. I'm not going to address hypotheticals. They raise arguments, we'll respond. And I think your question really underscores an important point. This is an active, ongoing matter, right? We have other phases of this going ahead. We will continue to do our speaking about this matter, about issues like that in court.
All right, last one.
From day one, kind of the viability of this case has been questioned in all sorts of media outlets, all over the place, including from the defendant himself. Can you respond to any of that, how you feel now that you've gotten the conviction?
So my response, again, is I did my job. And I think particularly I talked about the history of the office. My personal history, I started as a prosecutor in 2003 in the Public Integrity Unit in the New York State Attorney General's office. I served also in the Public Integrity Unit in the Southern District of New York. These are kind of cases I've done personally, and it's a hallmark of the tradition of this office that I'm proud to lead. And I don't want to go into the whole body of litigation, but we now have a federal court decision ruling on the legal theories. We had a state court decision on the omnibus motions. But most importantly, today we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records. Thank you.
District Attorney, your office has been investigating this case since
Are you concerned about retribution?
Okay, so that was Alvin Bragg there, the district attorney, who was speaking in front of the American and the world's press. He was saying that the most important voice that was heard there was the voice of the jury. It's fascinating, though, isn't it, when you hear the way that, I mean this with respect, foreign press asks people questions. So one of the questions put to him there, genuinely, by a reporter was, people have said that the prosecution here was masterful and flawless. How do you respond to that?
In the 1950s, when people used to say, Prime Minister, would you care to address the country? It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is
makes us, we complain about the British press, but at least we have a vibrancy that's some rather lacking in those questions.
You're listening to the voice there of Matthew Lazarus, a former Labour Party advisor. Susan Evans is still with us here in the studio, and I keep threatening to go to Suzanne and then not quite doing it, but that is because we do have a US Attorney, Deborah Bloom, who's on the line for us right now. Deborah, thank you very, very much. So Donald Trump is holed up in Trump Tower as we speak, where we think he's spending the night. And we've just heard from Alvin Bragg there, a man who has had repeated personal insults from Donald Trump. He declined to hit back there, but as far as he's concerned, he's done his job. Would you mind reacting to what is an absolutely historic moment in history here?
I'm shocked by the verdict. I really don't believe that the prosecution proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't believe that they proved intent to defraud. Don't believe that they proved that Trump had knowledge of what was going on, the ledger entries being manipulated, things of that nature. So I'm absolutely shocked. I think that this is a historic verdict. It definitely is going to be overturned. I think that there's good reason to appeal it. And I'm really really curious if the judge is going to sentence Donald Trump to jail time. He's a first-time offender. It's a nonviolent crime. Typically, these types of charges do not carry a jail time sentence, but he was convicted on so many counts, and also, we know that there was violations of the gag order, contempt. So I'm really curious if Judge Merchan is going to sentence him to jail.
Yeah, I mean, are they at risk of creating a monster here? Trump obviously will appeal this. There's no two ways about that. He could then be found not guilty. He could be found guilty again. He could be sentenced to prison. I mean, I just wonder whether or not either way, and Trump has become more powerful in all of this. What's your view?
I definitely think that this is only making his base stronger and stronger and getting him more and more support. I mean, Alvin Bragg has $41 million in his bank account. People question how that happened. I think that people are going to question some of Judge Merchan's rulings in this matter, especially how he handled the defense witness. I think that a lot of people feel that this was a political, I got you know, and I'm curious to see how it's all going to end up. I'm really curious if the judge is going to sentence him to jail. Typically, somebody of this background, of his age, would not get a jail sentence, but also we had the contempt, so that could factor in.
Okay, yeah, I will just point out that Alvin Bragg isn't here to defend himself, so, there we go. We are seeing, these are live shots right now of New York City, and there is a pretty strong message on that flag, which I cannot read out, but I will say it says F Biden. So the Trump base is out in force. What do you anticipate happening in the coming hours?
Well, I think that there's nothing that anyone can do until the actual sentence is rendered. Also, they're going to prepare Trump for his pre-sentence interview. He's going to meet with members of the New York City probation, and they're going to do a report. His lawyers and the prosecution are going to submit memorandums in support of the requested sentence. So that's what's going to happen between now and July 11th.
Deborah, look, just to put the other side of this up here, at what point does this start to look very, very desperate from Trump supporters? You've got a guy who many people do think did genuinely lose the last election, who then many people think did lead people towards a at least semi-violence. I mean, people died, didn't they, on January the 6th? Who has strung a lot of people along. I mean, can it really be the case that every single other person is corrupt and wrong and politically motivated other than Donald Trump, who is a bastion shining light of moral virtue in the world? I mean, can that really be the case?
Well, you have me here as a legal commentator, not a political commentator. So I can just tell you from a legal perspective that I do believe that this is a highly appealable case. We just had Harvey Weinstein's verdict overturned. So we'll see what happens. And I do think that there was a lot of political charge in this case. 2 federal agencies declined to prosecute this, and I'm not even sure that this court had jurisdiction to begin with. And also the issue was the judge presented something that wasn't unanimous, that the jurors were allowed to vote on one counts of the indictment if they selected one of 3 ways to convict Trump, and that they didn't have to be unanimous on that. So I think that's highly appealable.
Yeah. This is good. No, this is good. I'm really keen to get you on this detail because, right, so you are a U.S. attorney. You are right. You are here for the legal voice on this. So tell me how you will appeal this case. Come on.
So you would appeal this case on the basis of the judge's behavior towards Trump's defense witness, who said that Michael Cohen told me that Trump didn't know anything about this. The judge basically cut his testimony short. So that's one way. Another way is you go after Stormy Daniels' testimony and you say that it was outside of the scope, that it was used to bolster their case as opposed to actually proving anything about their case. You know, the whole issue of whether or not he met Stormy Daniels, that's irrelevant to whether or not he falsified business records. And there's a whole slew of other things like the statute of limitations. Trump's legal team was never made aware of how they were able to prosecute this case after the statute of limitations had expired. But it's been said that there was obviously an extension of the statute of limitations based upon a federal statute. So there are a lot of angles that could be used for this appeal, and this is going to be a monumentous sentence. He could potentially be in jail while running for U.S. president.
No, right now, Deborah, if it's possible, I'd like you to stay on there for me, because I have got another U.S. attorney, I believe now, Lisa Bloom, who I don't know if she was listening to some of the things that we just heard from our previous guest there. My understanding is you would refute all of that.
Hello, yes. And, you know, listen, Deborah makes some decent points. She's obviously a very good lawyer, but I don't agree with the analysis. I think that this case is going to hold up on appeal. It's very different from the Harvey Weinstein case, which was reversed on appeal based on other issues. In this case, Trump and his attorneys really got to call all of the witnesses, make all of the legal arguments they wanted to make. Stormy Daniels' testimony was important because she's the beginning of the story that ended with all of these false business records. So I've tried many cases in U.S. courtrooms. Of course, you're going to be able to tell the whole story, but her testimony was limited by the judge. So I really don't see a basis for an appeal.
So you don't see a basis for an appeal at all, despite everything that Deborah just said there about, Alvin Bragg, the personal attacks on Trump, the way that the jury was told that they could deliberate all of this, and the way that they could reach their verdicts and everything. I mean, you're laughing at that.
Personal attacks on Trump. I mean, listen, most judges would have smacked down his bad behavior much more quickly than this judge did. This judge kept giving him another chance and another chance and another chance. And he was going on his social media and attacking witnesses in the trial. That is clearly not allowed. Anybody other than Trump would have had much more significant consequences much earlier, potentially would have gone to jail during trial for that behavior.
OK, all right. Trump says it was rigged. Trump's still going to stand at the next election. We heard from Alvin Bragg there, and I just wondered, do you think he was grandstanding a bit there? Do you think he looked like a man who was, kind of reveling in the moment?
So I didn't see the Alvin Bragg part, but Trump has said everything was rigged from 2015 on. Before every election, it's rigged. So if I lose, boo-hoo, it's rigged. This is like your child coming home from school and saying, the teacher doesn't like me. And I would say, get back in there and do a better job. Oh, please. In what way is it rigged? It's not rigged in any kind of way against him. It's rigged in his favor so that he could make every argument with his high-priced lawyers, and he did.
Can I just ask, how serious is this, though, really? I mean, this is a bloke who, at worst, had sex with a woman a good number of years ago and then signed an expensive NDA, no?
It's much more than that. First of all, had sex with a porn star while his wife is home with their newborn baby. I thought this was the party of family values, but I guess nobody cares about that stuff anymore. I do. I think it's offensive, but that's not what the essence of the trial was. It was the documents. It was the falsified business records. It was the massive cover-up so that the American people wouldn't know about this campaign fraud violation. That's why they had to cover it up, because they knew it was wrong. Why couldn't he just say in the records, payment for Stormy Daniels? That would have been the end of it. He couldn't do that because it was done weeks before the election to affect the election and to keep the American public in the dark, and that he could not do.
Lisa, can I ask you a question? You don't have to say yes to it at all. We still have Deborah on the other line. Is it possible to just bring you both up at the same time so we can have a chat? Is that all right? It just strikes me that this was a perfect opportunity to have an impromptu debate here. So look, why not take it? Right, Deborah, you've heard a lot from Lisa there. What do you make of what you've just heard there? I mean, she has the polar opposite view to you.
I would love to work with Lisa because she sounds like an incredibly intelligent attorney herself. And, you know, she does make some good points about the fact that Trump's behavior, some could call irreprehensible, and he could have been subjected to jail time during the trial due to his contemptuous behavior. But overall, I still disagree about the case itself. I don't believe that this case should have ever been brought in state court. It's a federal election law violation, and when you prosecute federal election law violations, that's supposed to be done in federal court. I also don't believe that beyond a reasonable doubt that the jury should have found that he was guilty. I don't believe that they showed his intent to defraud. I don't believe that you're allowed to tell jurors that you can pick one of three and it doesn't have to be unanimous to find him guilty of the felony level falsifying business records.
Okay, go on then. Come back to that.
Yes, so it's a state case because what he was convicted of was falsifying business records. That is a state crime. But why? To cover up the federal crimes, the election fraud violation. So it is a little bit complicated in that way, but it was appropriately in state court because they were state crimes.
Okay, all right, and I mean, Deborah, you just fundamentally didn't think that, on the basis of the evidence that you appear to have seen, that he should have been found guilty.
Well, also, he could have been found guilty on the basis of a federal election law violation, and that's not typically how matters are tried. Either you're going to go to federal court and be guilty of a federal election law violation, or you're going to be in state court and be guilty of a state election law violation. So I just don't see why we're here.
Yeah, but we're here because he did violate state law 34 times, and you may disagree with the jury, but in our system, the jury has the last word on whether he was beyond a reasonable doubt guilty of each and every element of all of the crimes charged. And they found unanimously. I mean, imagine being on this trial, the intense pressure of being on this jury. I think it would be terrifying. Most people would not want to do it. Do you think there might be one holdout? I mean, everybody was thinking there might be one person who would hang this jury, and there wasn't. 12-0 that he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on all offenses, and that's because the documents were so clear. It really didn't matter what the witnesses said. They had the checks, they had the ledgers, they had the invoices, and they were all patently false. Listen, I have run a business for many years, my law firm. I have to be so careful with every document that I file. Everybody does. Every document that I keep internally. If you run a business, you have to be careful. He knew that. Alan Weisselberg, his chief financial officer, has gone to prison for fraud. Michael Cohen, his attorney, has gone to prison for these crimes. And Donald Trump now also should go to prison for what he did.
So you're taking it that extra step, and you're saying, ironically, given a former campaign slogan, lock him up. I mean, you know, Deborah, is that a bridge too far? Is one thing. By the way, just another piece of breaking news to bring you on this. Apparently, former President Trump has said that he will give a statement at 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I believe it's 7:10 in the evening in New York at the moment. But at 11 a.m. tomorrow, he's supposedly going to be giving a statement from Trump Tower, from the atrium at Trump Tower. He's also he's put that out on Truth Social, which is his platform, alongside the campaign slogan MAGA 2024. So there we go. What do you expect? What do you think he should say, Deborah? What could he say, do you think, that would maybe turn people's heads on this? Because, you know, it is difficult when the fact is, when you are officially found guilty of things, especially 34 counts, you know, it does tend to change people's views of you.
Well, I think that as a defense attorney, you would never advise someone to go beyond the scope of what you believe they should say, and he should really have a limited message. And that's been a problem for him, is that he goes beyond likely what legal advice he's received in his post. It says he shouldn't attack the judge, he shouldn't attack the jurors, but he should maintain his innocence. That's the most important thing for him to do, and I'm sure that he's going to continue to do that. It's just how far beyond that he goes could be problematic for him, because I believe there's probably a continued gag order, and the judge would be within his right to hold him in violation if he exceeds the scope of what he's allowed to say.
Can I just say this, that Donald Trump did not testify in the trial. Boo-hoo-hoo. He didn't want to testify. Now he wants to speak out on Truth Social, okay, where he's not cross-examined, where he's not under oath. He could have faced the jury and said, I didn't do any of this. It was all Michael Cohen. But he chose not to do that. And I think the conclusion is
that right.
because it was false. Yeah,
That's
of
your
course he has the right.
constitutional right.
He has the right, but then he goes on Truth Social and blasts everybody, including the judge. Listen, Donald Trump loses every time he goes to court. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. If you want a good bet, bet against Donald Trump in court. Whether it's his sexual assault case, he lost. Whether it's his defamation case, he lost. Whether it's Trump Organization committing fraud, he lost. He loses because in court you have to have facts and evidence, unlike on Truth Social or just speaking at rallies. So he's always going to lose in court because he always has.
Well, he's not always going to lose on appeal because in the defamation court, they awarded her $84 million, which is an obscene amount of money. People go to work and work for billion-dollar employers and they get almost deathly harmed and they don't ever see money or are never awarded money like that. So I do
Yeah, but that was based on his net worth because they got punitive damages because even during the trial for defamation of his sexual assault victim, he continues defaming her. So the jury had to hit him hard based on his net worth in the punitive damages case. That's the way it works. He could have kept his mouth shut. He could have shown a little respect, but he chose not to do it.
But even if he didn't, it's still exceeding the scope of what the monetary award should be. So these above and beyond verdicts against him could easily be overturned.
Can I ask you both to stay there? This is really compelling stuff. Seriously, I just would like to, if it's possible, just remind our viewers and listeners of what former President Donald Trump said as he came out of that courthouse, and I will get both of you, legal minds, both of you, to tell us whether or not you think he said the right stuff here. So here is former President Trump.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing, we didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man. And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration.
Okay, Deborah, your hot take on that. Was he wise to have said those things?
I certainly wouldn't have advised him to say those things. I do think that there could be some truth to some of the things that he's saying. I brought this up before. Alvin Bragg's net worth is $41 million, which based upon his career is really excessive. So I do think that there could be some machine working against Trump to bring all of these charges. This one in particular was probably the least strong of the pending criminal cases. So I wouldn't have advised him to say those things. I think it would be better just to continue to say that he's innocent. I don't think that he should point a finger and blame anyone in particular. All right. But I'm not surprised by any of this.
Final word to you on this, Lisa. Thank you, by the way, both of you. This has been really great stuff. But Lisa, final word to you. I assume we might end on a point of agreement, might we, that neither of you would have advised him to have said that stuff.
Well, that's correct because it's not true what he said, because Biden has nothing to do with the state court system, which is where this case came in. Trump can say it was rigged, it was rigged, it was rigged over and over as many times as he wants. There's no evidence of that. There's no proof of that. I didn't know that about Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, being wealthy, but if he is, good for him. It's not a crime to make money in this country. And Trump lost in court today, just like he has lost every day in every court he's ever been in, and he's going to continue to lose the other 3 cases.
OK, look, both of you, thank you very much. That is Deborah Blum and Lisa Blum as well. The 2 US attorneys going at it, hammer and tongs here. Thank you very much. Right, OK, so you are still with me, Patrick Christie's, right here on GB News. If you're just joining us, former President Donald Trump has been found guilty on all 34 counts It relates to hush money payments to a former porn star by the name of Stormy Daniels. In the last few moments, we have heard from the District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. He said that he's just done his job and that the jurors did the most important thing. He has not confirmed whether or not he'll be requesting a prison sentence, although I imagine that he obviously will. So we'll have to wait and see from that. We will find out on the 11th of July whether or not Trump will be sent to prison. There will be a sentencing that I reintroduce after a very long wait now. My wonderful panel. Suzanne Evans joins us in the studio alongside Lewis Schaefer and Matthew Larzer. Suzanne, what do you make of what we've seen here so far then? The fact that Trump has been found guilty, and I believe you've just been handed some more front pages. So this is how the British press have been dealing with it, Suzanne.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is quite the most incredible story. The first ever president of the United States to be found guilty on criminal charges. Will he do any jail time? Well, that's the big question. So sentencing in July the 11th. Now, there is, of course, one way that he could avoid jail, and that is to become president. Because if he's president, he can't be sent to jail because he wouldn't then be able to fulfil his presidential duties. So, and I think what this has done, I'm just been looking on Twitter and social media about how the Republicans are responding to this. And the overwhelming response is, this is a sham. Trump's now a political prisoner. There's no sense that it's a fair cop, bang to rights, we'll back off, we'll find another candidate. Absolutely not. They are doubling down. You know, Ted Cruz, senator in Texas, the decision is disgraceful, legally baseless. Madison Cawthorn, the former congressman for North Carolina, congratulations to Donald Trump on being elected president of the United States again today. Elon Musk has come out saying, are you still going to vote for Donald Trump in November? Asking for myself. So making his views very clear.
Interesting.
As well.
Interesting indeed, isn't it? Right, Lewis, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've been sitting there a little while. We've not actually heard from you yet. What do you make of this, then?
I think it's really good news. It's good news for America, because Americans can see how desperate the Biden administration is. And it's just so obvious to Americans is that this is something that would happen in Russia, where Russia would arrest somebody. But people in Russia have had this for whatever their entire lifetime. Okay. In America, we haven't had it. And Americans, I'm not saying we're not as bright as other people, but sometimes we have to be hit in the head with what's going on.
OK, so you're very much on that camp. Matthew, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and I will come to you on this. I'm going to whiz through the very first front pages that we've got for you. We'll keep you bang up to date here on GB News. So the Daily Telegraph, Trump guilty, and a picture of him looking down. I wouldn't say he looks particularly depressed there, really. Just kind of, it's just caught him, hasn't it? But let's go to the Times. This is the image for me. This is going to be the image that will live through our history. Trump found guilty in hush money trial. He was a piercing stare down the barrel of the camera, straight down the barrel. Let's go to the Daily Mirror. Trump guilty, and a picture of Stormy Daniels there. As I whiz through these, and let's just keep these front pages, rolling for us, really, I think. But, Matthew, Lewis is saying this is like something you'd get in Russia.
Oh, well, I mean, nice try, Lewis, but them's is the rules. America has a hugely politicised judicial system with, elections to offices at all levels from, which we just can't comprehend in a country where...
There's no democracy. That's what it is. Of course you can't, because the situation here is completely different than in America. I know you think we have the same system because it's quote-unquote democracy. I don't mean to interrupt.
No. But, I mean, what I mean is, yes, of course it's politicised. Yeah. It's not like it's particularly politicised in this instance. They're politicised. That's how the system works. Them's is the rules, and he's been found guilty under those rules
by a state. By a district attorney in New York City, which is the leftist place in the entire world.
But would it have been any fairer if it had been in the rightist place in the entire world?
Yes, it wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have come to this decision. I'm not saying, you know what? That's Donald Trump. He is so dodgy, and this is like the minor. And any other country, they might get you because you took money. This is Donald Trump. He's paying out money. How ridiculous is it? And you feel for the guy, because the guy's old too. He's not a youngster. I'm not saying how old I am, but you can just see he's worn out.
You're wearing better.
We had Nigel Farage on earlier, and a little bit later on, we're going to replay you, if you are just joining us, a couple of clips of what was quite an astonishing interaction I had with Nigel Farage. Nigel has said he's going to be out there with the GB News crew on the day of this sentencing on the 11th of July. You're looking at the front page of the I newspaper there, guilty, scuffles between protesters outside court, as Trump said. This was done by the Biden administration to hurt a political opponent. Our country has gone to hell. We have a divided mess. Millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and mental institutions as well. I mean, he is using this as a campaign pitch, Suzanne, isn't he?
He is, quite clearly. And you know, I think it's actually going to be quite successful. I mean, it remains to be seen, but I really do think it is. Trump is a man who has always courted controversy. He's always courted fame. This is not going to knock him back. He's already come out fighting. Be very interesting. He's going to be speaking in the morning, making a more formal statement. It looks like he was speaking off the cuff earlier, which I have to say quite surprised me. I thought he might have had a more formal statement prepared. Maybe he was completely shell-shocked. Maybe he was overconfident, thought he'd get through it. Despite, as Lewis, I think, rightly says, the fact this was in New York State. If he was going to be tried anywhere, this was the worst place he could possibly have been tried.
But he did it in New York, so that's the problem. It's not like it was chosen there for political reasons. He committed the crime in New York, therefore it's been tried in New York. And they weren't going to move it to Mississippi, were they?
But the people of New York, you know, when I was growing up in New York, we didn't like him. We didn't like him. We heard stories. We knew people who worked for him. I was in the real estate business. I remember I was in one of his. He bought a hotel, the Essex House Hotel, and he wanted to put homeless people in the hotel to get the resident tenants out. He was a nasty guy. He's Donald Trump. But and he might have done this thing, but you don't do it in the midst of an election, and that's what Joe Biden has done. He's basically said all bets are off. We got to get rid of this guy.
And the other thing is, you know, it was a crime. He committed a crime. It's not the worst thing somebody can do. You look at what other politicians have done and they've got away with it scot-free. I mean, arguably what the Clintons did was far worse than this. They got away with it scot-free.
And they are super rich from this. And the same thing with Biden is super rich.
Matthew, you look taken aback.
Well, you know, I mean, one of the issues, of course, here is that you say he's super rich. Actually, one of the things that's come out is he's not. And he was struggling to pay the bail money at one point.
Because he's not super rich.
Yeah, because it's all a house of cards, isn't it?
Biden has stolen millions, tens of millions, and the same thing with what they say about the prosecutor. He's got 41. How do you become a prosecutor in New York? I get 41.
I'd like to reiterate that Joe Biden, the current president of the United States of America, is not here to defend himself.
I'll do my best.
The allegation of outlandish theft made by Lewis Schaefer on the GB News sofa, and we'll probably
that was a joke. That was a joke.
It was a joke. It was a joke. No, that's there is. Look, Matthew, there does appear to be a concerted attempt to not just find Donald Trump guilty of everything, to ruin him financially, to put him in a prison cell, to grind this man into...
Well, I think that's now the huge question. So the 11th of July, 1 week after our own German election, so if we do have a change of Prime Minister, it's going to be quite a baptism of fire. You're going to be knocked off the news agenda pretty soon after coming to office, and just, I think, 5 days before the Republican convention, which you may not be able to appear at.
Suzanne, why does this matter to Britain? Let's localise it. OK, so, you know, we've got a guy here who is an unashamed ally of Britain. He loves us. He loves us over here.
Absolutely.
In a way that Biden doesn't.
You know, here we were, post-Brexit, steaming ahead towards a trade deal with the US. Biden comes in, pulls the plug. That's it. Gone into a black hole. He absolutely hates us. And look, Lewis is absolutely right. They've been out to get this guy for ages. Nigel Farage, in his interview with you earlier, Patrick, talked about the Abraham Accords. Now, this was the deal that Trump got together to actually get Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates to recognise the state of Israel, called the Abraham Accords because of the way the Muslim and the Jewish communities both recognise the prophet Abraham. An amazing stroke of peacemaking. He should have had a Nobel Peace Prize.
But this is also the man who's held up in Congress, who's got his supporters in Congress to hold up for months after month the essential aid to Ukraine, which has seen Ukraine push back on the battlefield and seen people die in Ukraine because of that. I'm not buying that he's a peacemaker. He can say, I believe in peace, but we live in an uncertain world.
There were no wars, Matthew, while Trump was in...
Yeah, that's not because of Trump's making.
He arguably actually put a lid on agitation in North Korea. He did it in a very dramatic way, albeit my red button's bigger than your red button. You know, I must admit, I saw that tweet myself and I thought, what the hell? But it worked. It worked.
The thing about Donald Trump is you're trying to present him as better or the same or something. He just represents a team. And the team is the team that's fighting for America. And he's at Biden, I don't know who he's fighting for. He's not fighting for anybody, but he's being manipulated by Obama and Hillary. I'm allowed to say this. You never know what you're allowed to say in British TV. Is that we'll find out.
Well, look, I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to suggest that maybe Joe Biden isn't running the show entirely by himself.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm suggesting.
Team player.
And I'm suggesting that the people who are running him aren't even running the whole thing. And that's what this is. Donald Trump is a horrible human being. I hate to say it.
We agree on that.
No, he's horrible. But that's how bad Biden is, and the rest of them are. He's so bad that they would. Sorry.
No, I was not silencing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to you. I'm just going to reintroduce Jennifer Ewing here, who's from Republican Overseas. Jennifer, thank you very, very much. My viewers and listeners here care, obviously, about Britain. How bad is this for Britain that Donald Trump has just been found guilty of 34 counts? What does this mean for us?
Well, I mean, I live in London as well, so I guess it takes me into consideration. First of all, I think he will beat this on appeal. So I do think he will probably still be elected president of the United States, which is a good thing for Britain because he's much more favorable to Britain than certainly the current president, Joe Biden, is.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, he is. I mean, this is kind of why I'm asking, really. I mean, Joe Biden has done quite a few things to deliberately throw two fingers up to Britain, and I actually just mean that very genuinely. I mean, the way that he did the whole Ireland trip was a complete and utter farce. He met for coffee with our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, or Rashid Sunook, as he announced him as initially, and from the Conservative Party as well. Like, of course, the Conservative Party is completely out of touch with anything race-wise in Britain. So, he's slammed us on numerous occasions, Joe Biden. It was asked about whether or not he wanted to talk to British press. He said no because I'm Irish and all of this. My point is... It wasn't very funny when he actually went to Ireland and then refused to talk to us. I mean, that was very real. My point is this, for Britain going forward here now, is this really just genuinely bad news for transatlantic relations?
I don't think it's...
No, go to Jennifer. Sorry, Jennifer, I am talking to you. How dare you?
I don't think it's bad news for transatlantic relations, though I do think what we're all witnessing, regardless of what you think about former President Trump, is what we've just seen is if the system wants to get you, they will. I mean, let's not forget Al Capone went away on tax fraud and Conrad Black on mail fraud. So if they want to get you, they'll get you. And they're trying to get in on a bookkeeping record. And I think if people are honest, which a lot of Democrats have been, they will say this is not a great day for the United States, not because of what's going to happen to Trump, but because of what's basically happened to our judicial system and how it's been weaponized. And if you're an honest person, you can see, especially, I think the reason why you didn't see people in the streets or, Nigel wasn't prepared or, a lot of Trump didn't have a speech prepared, as Suzanne alluded to. It's because the jury turned around so quickly that, that's quite shocking.
Genuinely, Jennifer, the last thing I would want to do ever is offend you, but I do value, I do value your opinion on this, okay? So from an outsider now, looking at America, this great country, and the world looks to America, right? And you've got a guy who has just been found guilty of all 34 counts, standing to be president, running against a bloke who many people wonder whether or not he may or may not have dementia. And you think, what is going on with you guys?
Yeah, well, Patrick, I mean, you would be in line with 75% of the country who does not want to see this rematch between former President Trump and President Biden. So you're right, we should be able to do better. However, we are where we are. And I think people do not have the luxury of caring about this bookkeeping record from pre-2016 or mean tweets or, things that have been misfiled when we have an open southern border. We have ridiculous inflation. We have a terrible economy. We have, as Suzanne also alluded to, we had 4 years of peace and prosperity under President Trump, contrary to what a lot of people thought. And I take slight offense, actually, to your other guest's comment about President Trump holding up this aid for Ukraine. I mean, it wasn't President Trump that was doing it. It was actually the American people saying, why are we protecting somebody else's border when we can't even protect our own? That's what was going on.
Okay. Jennifer, thank you very much. Thank you for your time this evening. Not once, but twice. You're doing sterling work for us. It's Jennifer Irving there of Republicans Overseas. I've seen a couple of you have been on your phone, which reintroduced my panel. I've got Susan Evans, political commentator, Lou Schaefer, headliners, regular, of course, and Matthew Larser, ex-Labour Party advisor there. Just saw a couple of you on your phones during that interview. Have you got any little snippets for us at all? People tweeting anything? Any fun?
Well, Robert, so RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, who is standing as an independent, and is polling about sort of 7-8% in the polling average. He has come out and condemned it. Has condemned both the verdict and the process. So interesting there that his political opponent, if he comes from kind of libertarian anti-COVID restrictions, is what kind of fired him up to stand for president. But he's joined in the Trump condemnation. OK, just to remind us to you all now, we're going to be hearing again from Nigel Farage very shortly here on GB News. So I just want to emphasise that we're going to be hearing again from Nigel Farage, the man who is a friend of Trump, a close ally of Trump, who will be out there with Trump on the 11th of July as the sentencing comes in. So, yeah, just to make sure that you all stay tuned for that, we'll be hearing again from Nigel Farage right here on GB News. I mean, he's had this to say on Twitter, that this verdict is a disgrace. Trump will now win big. So those are Nigel's views. What's going to be interesting, I think,
is Prince Harry. Of course, his...
Oh, sorry, it was a little bit of Nigel there interviewing Trump before, actually, wasn't there? There we go. But what is going to be interesting now, Suzanne, is how should Rishi Sunak react to this? You know, the guy who is, well, he's currently the Prime Minister, isn't he? How should he react?
He's got no option. He's just got to say, I accept the verdict. I don't know what else he can do. I think my panellists agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think that's the only option he's got, really.
Accept
he
the verdict,
can't come out fighting for Trump. He can't come out fighting for Biden. He's got to stay neutral on this and accept the decision of the court until...
You've got to respect,
until the appeal process is over and things may or may not change.
Exactly.
I think it's going to show the American people what possibly could happen if Labour comes, not that I support this, but if Labour comes into power in the next election, ever so slightly. I mean, you have to. I've lived here for 24 years. It's a lovely country. My children are English, and it's a lovely country. But I think in the American minds, you have to remember what the Americans are thinking. They're not thinking much about this country. Nothing personal. They don't care.
They've got bigger things on their mind.
Yes, and so. What can be done? The world, we've had so many years of peace in America since the Civil War has been basically peace, and then World War II. There's been no war outside.
Does this have the potential to erupt?
It is. We're in a war right now. It's a quiet war where this country is giving money to bomb Russia right now in the Ukraine war. The whole Israel thing. We're in the beginning part of a world war, and this is part of that world war, and that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a civil war in America. It's not just going to be in America. Then there's going to be a war in this country. I mean, let's just hope there isn't. But there's going to be something between...
Well, you're depressing us before bed, Lou.
Yes.
It's depressing, but unfortunately, I don't think you're wrong. That's the trouble. I mean, I think what we're seeing today is a microcosm of, as you say, a civil war in America. But unfortunately, we see it here too. We were talking about it right at the very beginning of the programme, about sectarianism in politics, about religion being brought into politics, about, this bitter divide between right and left, and never the twain shall meet. There used to be a time where you could debate each other and respect each other's opinion. That seems
political era where the whole of the Republican establishment who've come out and joined in the Trump condemnation of the jury. I don't think you'd have the process of law condemned in a way like that 20 years ago, no matter which side of the argument.
It is. Look, there absolutely is something to be said for once you have the total rejection of law, and that may well be founded, it may be unfounded, but once you have that total rejection of it, then it's a very risky time to be. Go on.
It is about the politicisation of the judiciary in America as well, about the fact that judges stand for political party representation. We don't have that here. I've argued in the past that our judges have become highly politicised, but they are not party political, and there isn't a clear agenda. And that is one of the problems with the American system.
Sorry, but you don't have to be party political to be political. No, so you're not. So in this country, they take a stand. They might not say, well, this is a Labour stand or the Tory stand, but they take a stand.
They take a stand, absolutely, but they're not standing for a party. Right. So if you're a Conservative judge, you've got a Labour MP before you who's on trial.
Fine. I'm just going to we're just going to press pause there for now, and so this is Nigel Farage's reaction. Just again, as we all know, Nigel's actually planning on. Quite famously, actually, planning on doing some campaigning for Trump in the run-up to the election, much to the disappointment of plenty of people, of course, who are the British electorate. But Nigel was going to be doing that. And here's what his reaction is to this sensational, breaking, historic news that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has been found guilty on all 34 counts at a New York courthouse. Here's Nigel.
Left in America and parts of it in the UK, and we see it through cancel culture and much else. They are so obsessed with beating their opponents, they will sink to any levels to do it. I repeat the point. Fair-minded Americans will look at this and say it's simply wrong.
Do you think you will see the inside of a prison cell?
I think that's unlikely because there is an appeals process. He will obviously use that. And you would have thought that any judge that wanted to maintain peace and order in America daren't do it. But I'll be honest with you, I never thought on the very odd case that because this had happened, it might have affected the election. I never thought a jury would unanimously find him guilty on all 34 counts. So I could be wrong. Maybe he will go to prison. Maybe he'll be a modern-day martyr, for all I know.
I'm going to take us to America now with GB News' US correspondent, Stephen Edgington. Stephen, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on this show again. All right, what's the latest where you are? How is America reacting to this? What have you got for us?
We've seen a huge rise in donations for the Trump campaign. If you look on Twitter, there's people from Silicon Valley who've just donated $300,000, I just saw on Twitter. Many other people are saying that the website, Trump's donation website, has actually crashed because so many people are flooding to help his campaign. Now, interestingly enough, on the other side of the debate, Joe Biden's campaign have put out a tweet also trying to raise money off the back of this prosecution, which may even go to Trump's argument and narrative that this is a political prosecution. The Democrats are certainly trying to weaponize it. And this isn't just being reacted to in the United States. We've also seen the president of El Salvador, Bukele. He tweeted today after the conviction, he talked about the Maginot Line. Now, that sounds like a bit of an obscure reference there, but it's actually the French series of fortifications before the Second World War, which gave the French a kind of false sense of security. And I think the implication is basically the Democrats think they can take down Trump using lawfare, using the courts. And actually, this is offering them a false sense of security. When it comes to the election, this could go Trump's way.
As I understand it anyway, Stephen, we're expecting to hear from Donald Trump at 11 a.m. New York time from the atrium at Trump Tower. He's certainly not going down without a fight. This is battle lines drawn, isn't it, really? An unprecedented situation. I don't know how unexpected this really is, though. I know it's not happened before, right? But, I mean, I think there must have been some suspicion that they were going to find him guilty. I mean, it was New York, wasn't it?
I think the Trump campaign were prepared for this. It looks like they're pumping out a series of tweets and ads, and their influencers are really, really campaigning hard, as I say, to raise money, to make sure that people are motivated to campaign and to vote later this year in the election. Of course, both sides of the campaign will have been prepared for any outcome, including this guilty verdict, although it does seem, or it did seem before, that this charge was very, very weak, or this prosecution was very weak. In fact,
can I just ask that on that, Stephen? Sorry to cut across you, but I think it's an important point. Why is that? So why was it seen as so weak?
I think it was because the case itself was quite complicated and nuanced and very rare. This happened a decade ago. The charges were very difficult to understand. It wasn't directly about the hush money payment. It was actually about that leading to a second crime, which then became a felony in terms of him sort of misrepresenting how he filed the campaign funds. So it just seemed to many legal experts and so on that the case itself was so complicated and seemed so weak from a legal perspective that people wouldn't convict. Now, obviously, this was a case in New York City. The jury were obviously picked from New York, which is a very sort of Democrat-heavy area. So I think that Trump and his team are saying, look, this was a political jury, this was a political judge, this was a political case. We had a Democrat, Alvin Bragg, who was the prosecutor. So I think that, you know, from their perspective, this was very much a political decision and a political conviction.
Yeah, Alvin Bragg speaking earlier on, doing his best to, you know, be #humble, was asked questions by the American media, which I'm assuming you might have heard this, Stephen, but included, and I am not making this up, people have said that the prosecution here was magnificent and flawless. Would you like to comment on that? And I heard that and I thought, you know, is this seriously the way that, if that is the way the media have been approaching this from the Democrat side in America, it's no wonder he's been found guilty of everything, is it?
It's interesting. The US media once asked Joe Biden a question about ice cream. That's how ferocious they are when they come up against the Democrats. Of course, when they ask questions of Donald Trump and Republicans, it's certainly a different story in terms of the level of sort of argument and heated debate. I think that's right, Patrick. Look, the American media definitely skews to the left. It's definitely far more liberal than conservative. And they have been, in many cases, in many newspapers, in many outlets, drumming up this kind of support for the prosecution of Donald Trump. They've been wanting to put him in jail for many, many years. Journalists absolutely despise him. The media class despise him. The elite despise him. And this all goes to Trump's narrative that this is a witch hunt against him, not just from the prosecution, not just from his political opponents, but also from his opponents in the media.
We do not know yet, although I think we can guess, whether or not Alvin Bragg will be seeking a prison sentence here. The maximum prison term, I think I'm right in saying, could be about 20 years. There wouldn't appear to be a huge precedent for that, mainly because he's not been convicted of anything before, and just the actual nature of the offence anyway. In the hush money case, which this is, the 34 charges have been stepped up from misdemeanors to Class E felonies. So, all right, there is a step up there, but it's not the kind of thing one would normally face 20 years in prison for. I think just while I've got you, Stephen, it's worth emphasising some of the other issues at play here, though. This classified documents case, he could face up to 450 years in prison for. There's also a federal election interference case. We all know what that is. It relates to January the 6th, up to 55 years. And there's another one as well, the Georgia racketeering case, 76.5 years. Look, you know, I look at this now and I look at the way that it's been described here, and I just think, you know, if they want to get you in America, they can, can't they?
It certainly seems that way. They're able to elect their district attorneys, so the elections of these prosecutors are inherently political, and the Democrats seem to have made a political calculation that they are going to try and imprison their political opponent. Now, I think that this is probably a mistake. It will highly likely backfire. If the Republicans do win in November, then surely all that pressure from their supporters and from their base will be for their own district attorneys to prosecute Democrats, Joe Biden and his son, for example. So I think they've opened a real Pandora's box here, And I think we're seeing and witnessing in real time
it's a great point.
The collapse of American democracy. The point about the other cases, I mean, they won't probably be prosecuted for a while. Trump's lawyers have been able to delay them. And also, they are mostly federal charges, I believe. I think the one in Georgia is a state charge. And of course, if Trump wins in November, he can simply pardon himself for federal charges, but not for state charges. And what you have to remember here in the New York case, these were also federal crimes he was being prosecuted for. So the one in Georgia is very interesting. If he gets convicted under that prosecution, then he can't really get out of that if he wins in November.
You raise a serious point, which is we could well be staring down the barrel of political prosecutions on steroids forever now in the United States of America. And where does that really lead, you know, in the land of democracy and supposedly the leader of the free world? But Stephen, can I just say a massive thank you for being on not once but twice on this show. I know you're going to have probably, I imagine, a couple of sleepless days over this. I would also urge everybody to check out everything that Stephen Edgerton, our US correspondent, does for us online. He's operating at the very top of his game at the moment. Make sure that you do that. Stephen, thank you very much. All the best. Stephen Edgerton, the GB News US correspondent for us. Look, I've got a little bit of time to introduce my panel. Matthew, you were, excuse me, shaking your head vigorously there. You say this isn't political, they're just enforcing the law.
Absolutely. This is what it's about. It's about enforcing the rules. And actually, I think it's a good day for America, not because he's been convicted, but because it's shown that nobody is above the rules and that the rules apply to each and every person, even somebody who... I mean, Donald Trump thinks the rules don't apply to him. You saw it in his arrogant attitude all the way through the trial, which is actually, I think, what might end up costing him the prison sentence. Because I think that one of the aggravating factors when the judge makes...
to prison for being arrogant.
No, I'd
have been there years ago.
He broke the orders that the judge had done. He'd been, to use an Americanism, disrespecting the court. You know, the judge kept saying, "Don't do this outside. Don't post on social media."
At what point
and
does
he did.
Trump?
So I think that might push over.
See, this is the other aspect to this. This is the other aspect to this. This guy, look, it's a stressful job being president and being former president, and then you've got all of this. Is there a chance that Trump just snaps here at some point? Do you think?
Maybe he's going to announce at 11 a.m. he's not going to stand.
That'd be amazing.
Interesting development, given that his donations website has just crashed and he's got more money probably to fund his campaign than he had at the last one. The amount of pressure is intense on him. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You know, I've been around in politics long enough to know that the pressure can get exceedingly brutal and very tough, and you have to be a very tough cookie to be able to get through it. If anyone can, Trump can. He does seem to have the hide of a rhinoceros. He doesn't seem to get angry or upset easily. But gosh, incredible pressure. There's a possibility, I suppose. But I think he's a man who is so, in a sense, it is arrogance, as Matthew said. He is just so utterly self-confident, convinced he is right.
Well, clearly.
This could just actually fuel his determination even more. Well, it will.
Yeah, I'm just going to reintroduce, before I go to Lewis on this, just going to reintroduce the spokesperson for Republicans overseas, UK, Errol Moorcock. Errol, thank you very, very much. So, yeah, we're going to hear from Trump tomorrow, 11 a.m. New York time. Forgive me for not knowing immediately off the top of my head exactly what time that is for our viewers and listeners.
4 in the afternoon.
4 in the afternoon. That's why I have people here near me. What are we expecting him to say?
Well, I think it's going to be kind of what we've already heard him say. You know, this is the rigged result of a rigged trial by a Biden DOJ that's weaponized its surrogates. And he's going to come out there and he's going to say, basically, you know, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. That's one of his famous taglines. And he's going to double down on this. You know, he's come out as almost the alternative candidate in every respect. If you're a libertarian, he went to libertarians and he made his plea. If you're a Bitcoiner, he went to the Bitcoin people and he made his plea. You know, he's made a plea to the Muslim American community, the Black American community. He's been, you know, reaching out as much as he can. So I think tomorrow he's going to come and put all of that together and say, look, I'm the zenith of what these people have done to corrupt and bastardize our political system. And if you don't elect me in November, then you're going to be controlled by people who are lawless and unstoppable. And the people who are going to have their hands on the nuclear codes are going to be people who are willing to imprison their political enemies for no reason. And I think that's not going to play well for the Democrat Party. At least I hope so. So we'll see how that goes, though.
Our US correspondent there, Stephen Edgerton, was talking about the slippery slope effect here So whether or not this is going to result in a tennis match of egregious political prosecutions in America. And look, hey, you know, I don't have any right to say this. Really, I'm not American. I'm a Brit, and I don't want to be seen in any way to be, you know, casting aspersions on your great country. And for my money, you know, our best ally, absolutely. But I do put it to you that if it ends up in that situation where it is this tennis match of vicious political prosecutions, you know, that's a bit Russia. It's also, well, it's a bit Banana Republic, actually. Do you think it'll get there?
Well, I don't think it will get there, and I'll say that when we won the presidency in 2016, even though there were chances of lock her up, and yes, there was some bad blood, President Trump, you know, turned away from that and focused on the country as opposed to persecuting the people who he had defeated in that election. I don't think that it would help our country at all to be going tit for tat. I mean, yes, we could find some trumped up charges, no pun intended, and bring Joe Biden down in some, you know, random city in the South, but that's not going to help anybody. And I think the Republicans need to, you know, not only, if we win, which we are going to, we need to be the bigger party. We need to show America that we're not going to go tit for tat. We're going to ignore these people.
I mean, is he your guy for that, though? You know, look, I do put it to you, is he your guy? The first words out of Trump's mouth after this rigged trial, conflicted judge, disgraceful trial. He's fighting for his country and the Constitution. This has been done by the Biden administration. This is all crooked. You know, how does what you've said there chime with what we are, well, with Donald Trump, really?
Well, I guess because in 2016, he had a strong rhetoric as well, but he didn't weaponize the Department of Justice. So I don't believe that, unless, of course, Joe Biden has committed a crime, which perhaps he has. And if he has, then maybe he will be prosecuted for it. But I don't think that an unjust interrogation of Mr. Biden would incur. I think some of the dealings that he's been doing and selling his office might come back to bite him, but that might be
Errol, can I thank you very much? I'm aware that you've been sitting on the line there for a long time as well. That is Errol Moorcock there, who's the spokesperson of Republicans Overseas UK. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you very, very much. I think I might be joined now. Yes, I am. By Peggy Grant, who's the executive assistant, former executive assistant to Ronald Reagan. Peggy, thank you very much. Tremendous to have you on the show as a fabulous late addition. OK, right, what's your take on this then? What's happening? Trump guilty on all 34 counts. We've had a variety of different opinions so far. What do you make of it?
And, you know, I'll just say this is...
Yeah. Peggy, very sorry. We're just going to get an issue with your line. We will get it sorted. I will come back to you. Apologies. Yes, OK. Lewis, bring you in on this now. This is, well, from what our last guest was saying, you know, Trump needs to be the bigger man as a result of this. And
he may not be the bigger man. He's become a bigger man, but he may not be the bigger man. I think we're headed for a very bad period. And during the Civil War in America, it was a very bad period, but people got over it a couple of years later, 10, 15 years later. It was like basically forgotten. It was back to whatever normal meant. I think the Democrats in America are on the back foot. Because if they were on the front foot...
it's quite an astonishing... Yeah, OK, fine, but it's quite an astonishing thing to say, you know, Matthew, that the Democrats are on the back foot when their breaking news strap right at the bottom of people's screens now says, you know, former US president, Republican President Donald Trump, found guilty, the first in history.
Absolutely. I think, look, the Republican base will bounce back. Trump's been sending out his fundraising emails because he can say, I'm a political prisoner. Obviously, the Biden administration, doesn't want to be seen to be interfering with the process, which there's no evidence it has at all. But apparently what we're seeing already is that Democratic candidates are sending out fundraising emails. They'll move.
You think it's as simple as just sending out a fund?
No.
The people know. The people know, and they're with, and at least half the people are with Donald Trump, or more than half, and it seems to be growing daily. And so eventually Donald Trump will win this thing.
You know, the Democrats actually have got a huge responsibility here, because if they escalate this, things could get very
But I thought what we saw was the tone.
If on July the 11th he is jailed, there will be aggro on the streets. I mean, hopefully we can, at this stage, that won't happen. But if he's sent to jail, you said earlier on, Matthew, that nobody is above the law and the law must treat everybody equally. This charge, this conviction, does not normally carry a prison sentence.
I agree with you.
He's put to jail.
Yeah, I think. But can I determine to get my very quick facts in, which he wouldn't be the first presidential candidate to campaign from behind prison bars. In 1920, the Socialist Party candidate Eugene V. Debs ran for president from a federal penitentiary in Atlanta.
And it's on that wonderful nugget of information that we finally draw things to a close tonight. Can I just say a massive thank you, Suzanne, a massive thank you, Liz, a massive thank you Matthew as well. Honestly, yeah, we had to rip up the running order as you would expect because Donald Trump has been found guilty on all charges. I'll be back again from 9 p.m. tomorrow.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you are just watching us on telly or online now, that is the President's motorcade, former President's motorcade, pulling away. It's 11 p.m. Huge breaking news tonight. Former US President Donald Trump has been found guilty on all 34 counts in his hush money trial. He was accused of falsifying business documents to cover up a hush money $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. The jury of 12 New York residents returned the verdict about 1 hour ago. just before Justice Juan Merchan was set to release the group after a full day of deliberations. So the unprecedented conviction marks the end of the 6-week-long trial in Manhattan. Donald Trump has made history now after becoming the first criminally convicted former US president. We are going to be hearing this hour from Nigel Farage, a close confidant of the former president, a man who has already said that this is a ridiculous verdict and that Trump will win. But here is the former president outside that courthouse.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution.
Well, I'm joined now by Jennifer Ewing, who is from Republicans Overseas. Jennifer, thank you very, very much. Is Trump right? This was rigged?
I mean, it's definitely politicized, absolutely. You've got a district attorney who ran on getting Trump. You have a judge whose daughter is one of the biggest Democratic fundraiser and, you know, has raised millions and millions of dollars for Democrats and basically sells merchandise with Trump behind bars. And then yesterday, what we heard, you know, sort of later in the evening was the instructions that had been given to the jury was telling them that this mystery felony that we waited, 6 weeks to find out what it was basically a pick your felony. They had a choice of 3, and the 12 jurors did not need to agree on what felony that was. So there's been a lot of unusual things about this, and it's disappointing for sure. It will
make of Alvin Bragg. What do you make of the district attorney Alvin Bragg here? Because they're trying to claim that this isn't politically motivated, but many people point to Alvin Bragg and they say, well, that very much shows that it is.
Yeah, I don't know who these people are. I think anybody, regardless of your political leanings, can see that this was politically motivated. And several people had turned down this case for years, thinking there's nothing to see here. It's a bookkeeping error, right? Why did we only have the revival of this case turn up after Donald Trump decided he was going to run for election? So let's not forget, the Department of Justice was weaponized against not a former president, but the top running mate of President Biden.
Yeah, OK. What does this mean now, though? Do you think Americans are going to be more or less likely to vote for him as a result of this? Guilty of all 34 charges, well, conceivably, I mean, absolute worst-case scenario. I will stress that this is unlikely, but could face 20-odd years in prison for this. There's the classified documents case, up to 450 years in prison, so that is a life-changer. The federal election interference case, up to 55 years. The Georgia racketeering case, 67.5 years. I mean, you know, if this was supposedly going to be the weakest of the cases against President Trump, are we looking at a man who might die behind bars?
No, I don't think so. And don't forget that this is the only one that was going to take place before November 5th. The other ones, and you mentioned the documents case in Miami, that was postponed indefinitely because of some of the evidence. So that we don't even have a date for that one. And that's what a lot of people thought was the strongest one. But going back to this one, you know, will it change voters' mind? Actually, PBS, I believe it was PBS and NPR, so both very left-leaning organizations, we would say, did a poll in the last couple of days and asked people, would a conviction in the New York trial change the way you voted? And 67% of the people said no.
Look, I'm just going to ask you to just pause for a second, please, Jennifer, if that's okay. But please do stay where you are. Jennifer Ewing there, Republicans Overseas. I am now joined by Donald Trump's former advisor, Seb Gorka. Seb, thank you very much for coming on to GB News here. All right, look, you were in the White House with Trump. You know this guy. What's going to be happening now? What's going to be going through his mind?
Well, everything he's said for the last 5 months during this kangaroo court of a show trial. As he said, this isn't about him. This is about everybody who wants America back, from the left left-wing crazies who've opened our borders, have their kids chanting from the river to the sea in pro-Hamas demonstrations, who've let 8 million illegals into the country, seen record inflation, record increases in the price of energy and petrol. So look, this man is undaunted. His challenger for the presidency, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I think will be in his next cabinet, God willing, said it correctly 48 hours ago. Whether he's found guilty or innocent will redound to his chances. He's already defeating the incumbent Joe Biden in all the battleground states. If he were found innocent, then he would have been vindicated. If he's found guilty, as he were today by this travesty of a decision, the people who say, you know what, that's rigged, are going to support him even more. He now has the majority of the Hispanic vote in America. He now has upwards of 28% of the black vote. If those turn into actual propensities on election day, the Democrats are stuffed. They're dead.
Okay, Seb, now just enlighten us over here on this side of the pond as to exactly why you say this is a kangaroo court. Why?
Where to begin? How many hours do you have? So let's start with the fact that the judge, Juan Merchan, illegally, according to the state regulations of New York, donated to the Joe Biden campaign. Judges aren't allowed to donate to campaigns. Not only that, he donated to an anti-Trump super PAC as well. His daughter, Lara Merchan, has made $93 million off the Democrats since the trial began and off her daddy's case. Number one. Number two, we had this outre, bizarre, perverse jury instructions from the judge 2 days ago where he said, you know that thing about 12 of you have to agree on the guilty thing? Don't worry about that. For the first time in history for a felony trial, if 4 of you agree on one of them and not the rest, and then another 4 of you agree on another of the charges, that's good for me. I'll take that as a unanimous verdict. It is Stalin-esque, it's Kafka, it's out of control. You don't have that option to say, you can pick and choose like you're on the buffet line at a smorgasbord. No, 12 have to say he's guilty or he's innocent.
Do you think they'll see the inside of a prison cell?
If he does, the Democrats are more stupid than I ever thought. Look, he's a free man today. He just about 10 minutes ago left the court in his Secret Service motorcade back to his home. They've said the sentencing will be in July, of course, right before the Republican convention, because none of this is political at all. Look, if they put him in prison, he's just going to stroll into the White House a few months later because the Democrats are cretins. They're evil sons of bitches, but they're also cretins because they haven't read the Constitution. The Constitution is very explicit. There's only 3 requirements to be president. You have to be over 35, you have to be a natural-born citizen, and you have to be resident in the United States for the 14 years prior to the election. Doesn't say anything about being a convicted criminal. That's how dumb the Democrats are.
Okay, all right. Now, just purely because this show gets replayed, possibly anyway, in the early hours of the morning, I want to apologise for some minor bad language there, but I think that emphasises the strength of feeling. Seb, just while I've got you, and thank you for your time, I know you've not got too long here, but what's the reaction to this going to be like? I mean, there was the January 6th stuff. I know that a lot of that was massively overplayed, you know, but there were serious aspects to it. Are we going to see things like that again here, do you think?
Well, we still don't know who the provocateurs were in January 6th, so that's a very good question. I think one of my callers said it on my national radio show about 30 minutes ago. What we need to do right now, you don't even have to buy anything, get a piece of paper, write in big felt tip, Trump, and stick that on the window of your car, because we are in solidarity with the 45th, and God willing, if we do our part, the 47th President of the United States.
Seb, thank you very, very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it. And no doubt we'll be hearing a little bit more from you over the course of what is going to be a bumper news day. That's Sebastian Gorka there, who's a former advisor to Donald Trump in the White House. What I'm going to do, so what we're witnessing here, by the way, if you are watching us on television, again, I would also just say if you're listening to us on radio, then do try to get near a television or a laptop and watch this. Is Trump's motorcade is driving through New York. This has been going on for quite a while now. As he leaves that courtroom, he has been found guilty of all 34 charges. What I would like to do is to just read out to you what's on the front of some of our newspaper front pages right here in this country. I'm going to start with the Daily Telegraph. Trump guilty, and the picture of Trump not really looking downcast, just looking down, really. Former president is the first to become convicted of a crime after hush money verdict. So that's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. We've got the front of the Daily Times as well, and these pictures, you know, sometimes you just see, oh don't worry, when Trump gets to his destination, I'll show all of these to you, but some absolutely iconic images that you just know. These pictures, yeah, there it is, look at that. Now, that might seem a bit innocuous now, but mark my words, that is a shot that will live forever. Trump found guilty in hush money trial. He's in the courtroom there. He's looking defiantly down the lens like it's a barrel of a gun. Donald Trump has been convicted of fraud by a New York jury in relation to falsifying business records to conceal a payment made to a porn star during the 2016 campaign for the White House. Let's see, shall we, how the Daily Mirror have reacted to this historic trial verdict. Ex-president faces trial after jury convicts him on all 34 counts over hush money trial. There is that picture of him there for added emphasis of him with Stormy Daniels. The Daily Star, why not? We've come this far. Orange man baby is guilty on all counts. You've been tangoed. So a variety of different ways in which President Trump, former President Trump, has been treated there. And they've done tangoed in orange writing. I will just say to you, we're going to hear from Nigel Farage very shortly, so stay tuned for that. This is the man, let me remind